Number 5. Getting in is impossible. Area 51 didn't get a reputation as one of the most secretive places in America because it was easy to get into. And there's a reason our best idea for getting a peek inside was to just swarm the place en masse and hope that there'd be too many of us to stop. The thing is, they saw that coming. Mostly because we broadcasted it and made Facebook groups about it and it was a big meme, but as well, the entire surrounding area around Area 51 is completely surveyed. Armed soldiers patrol the perimeter at all times, and they watch the airspace up above, so no dropping in Fortnite style either. Up until 2018, you couldn't even get a good look at it from satellite imagery since it was censored on Google Earth. Now, some conspiracists say there's cameras hidden in the surrounding countryside in the rocks, and I honestly believe that. They keep an eye on everything that goes on the main road. You want to know how seriously they take security at Area 51? Those employed at Area 51 fly in from McCarran International, as there's no commuter traffic allowed. I'm guessing all the parking spaces are taken up by UFO parking. Employees fly in from a secret airline called Janet Airlines, an acronym which, funnily enough, stands for just another non-existent terminal. Janet may be America's most secretive airline. Anyone working it needs top-level clearance. That's everybody working it. Even the flight attendants need to be cleared for top-level clearance. Just in case they overhear a man in black suits talking about the Type 25 plasma pistol they recovered off the crash site of the Kig-Yar Scout they found just outside of Roswell, they know not to report that to anybody. Now, no word on whether or not Janet Airlines contributes to air miles, but I have to imagine their frequent flyer reward program is pretty impressive.
Number 4. Employees are paid in cash. In 2010, some of the secrets about Area 51 were declassified, and former employees were able to talk about their time at the secretive military base. One of these former employees, a 72-year-old named James Nose, gave an interview about his time at Area 51 to the Seattle Times. James claimed not to have seen any UFOs or aliens, but hey, maybe that just wasn't declassified material he could talk about. The interview contains some interesting anecdotes about some US government covert ops, but what I find most interesting about the interview is his claim that several of the employees were paid in cash. He would be paid in cash, and as a result, there was no paperwork connecting him to Area 51, which is probably why my landlord also insists on being paid in cash. Other employees claimed that when they were paid by check, the checks would be from unrelated non-government companies such as Pan American. So although we don't know for sure what is being done at Area 51, we know that it is so secretive that they don't even want a record of who has worked for them.
Number 3. They're expanding. The most secret building in the world is getting bigger, slowly but surely each year, and no one on the outside knows why. And they're doing it the way they do everything, which is to say clandestinely and not telling nobody nothing. They've been expanding the area surrounding the base, buying up swaths of land to assimilate inside of it. From what can be observed, new hangars and new runways are being built, but you know, again, it's impossible to ascertain what for because everything revolving around this building is top-level clearance, so we only have wild mass guessing to go on. Obviously they're building more hangars because they're collecting more UFOs. I mean, what else could it really be? I'm a guy on a YouTube channel, I'm a trusted news source. They hit a bed of a snag in 2015 when the mass of land they were swallowing up was owned by a family who'd held the land for the past century. They refused their offers to give it up, and the Air Force offered the family $5.9 million. But the family wanted to hold out for more as they felt it wasn't a good enough offer. And honestly, it's the US Air Force. We know they've got the money. Spring a little for it. It's not the first time the secretive base has grown. When it was first established in 1955, it was a little over 6 by 10 miles. But these days, the base has become so large, it's now 4,500 square miles across. Area 51 is getting big enough to be its own state. It's bigger than Rhode Island, Connecticut, and Delaware, the 3 best states. I can't tell you what they're doing or what they need all that space for, but it does keep me awake wondering.
Number 2, there is a presidential declaration exempting them from turning over classified materials. In the United States, an organization can be forced to disclose classified information for a variety of reasons. As an example, if the Environmental Protection Agency believes that an organization is disposing of toxic waste in a way that goes against local hazardous laws, they can order that organization to turn over relevant materials, classified or not, in order to aid in the EPA's investigation. On September 29, 1995, President Bill Clinton signed a presidential determination exempting Area 51 from these laws. As Clinton stated in his determination, "I find that it is in the paramount interest of the United States to exempt the United States Air Force's operating location near Groom Lake, Nevada, from any applicable requirement for the disclosure to unauthorized persons of classified information concerning that operating location. Therefore, pursuant to 42 U.S.C., I hereby exempt the Air Force's operating location near Groom Lake, Nevada from any federal, state, interstate, or local provision respecting control and abatement of solid waste or hazardous waste disposal that would require the disclosure of classified information concerning that operating location to any unauthorized person." This determination has to be renewed by the president every year, and we know for a fact that the next president, George W. Bush, chose to uphold and renew it, making this a rare example of bipartisanship.
They cover up a lot. Now look, this whole video we've been talking about everything they cover up, but it goes so much deeper than you know. You might think working at Area 51 would be your way into learning all the secrets the base has to offer. You know, pick up a broom, sweep something up, learn about the aliens. But you might be saddened to know even those with top-level clearance are still kept in the dark on just about everything. In the 90s, there was a bit of a controversy when several lower-level Area 51 workers tried to file a suit against Area 51 because exposure to the black site's hazardous materials was making them sick. Apparently, the base would have stacks of discarded equipment, scraps, and hazardous waste left around in open trenches the size of football fields, and then to dispose of them, workers would cover them in jet fuel and light it on fire, leading to toxic smoke blowing all throughout the base. Definitely sounds very safe. This smog was affectionately nicknamed London Fog by the workers in between bouts of coughing fits. Several workers came down with skin conditions or respiratory conditions from their time working the black site. But where things get curious is that they don't even know what was being burned around them. And when the workers tried to file their lawsuit, the base refused to clarify or even acknowledge what had been burned. In fact, the government outright refused to even acknowledge the name of the base, as up until 2013, they still pretended the thing didn't exist at all and were very careful in all official documentation to avoid saying the name of it ever. Did you know it wasn't even until 2013 that the base was ever officially acknowledged by a president? It was President Obama, and he was doing so in a bit of a jokey manner too. The government only acknowledged the workers after their lawyer had provided them with satellite photos of the base acquired from a dubious source. Whatever was being burned there was pretty serious stuff. I mean, we can only speculate. Plasma recovered from a Type 52 troop carrier? Ectoplasm? Unobtainium? We may never know. And that's what makes me want to know.
Number 5. John Callahan. John Callahan, the former division chief of the Accidents and Investigations Branch of the Federal Aviation Administration, made claims that he had received information about a UFO sighting from Japanese pilots. According to Callahan, the government was involved in a cover-up, concealing crucial evidence related to this otherworldly encounter. Callahan's claims surrounded an incident that occurred in the late 1980s, which involved Japanese airline pilots reporting a close encounter with an unidentified flying object. The details of the sighting raised questions regarding the possible existence of extraterrestrial life and the government's role in suppressing such information. Callahan said that the FAA had indisputable evidence, including radar data and audio recordings of communication between the pilots and air traffic controllers. Callahan's claims were built on the foundation that the government intentionally withheld this information from the public, which further sparked concerns about transparency and accountability from the government. His claims fueled already bountiful suspicions among UFO enthusiasts and conspiracy theorists who believe that governments worldwide are actively concealing evidence of extraterrestrial encounters. Callahan's credibility lent weight and plausibility to his claims. As a former high-ranking official within the FAA, he held a position that frequently granted him access to extremely sensitive information and insider knowledge. His decision to come forward and expose the cover-up added a sense of authenticity to the narrative. Skepticism and scrutiny quickly followed Callahan's publicized revelations. People questioned the reliability of the evidence and questioned the motivations behind his disclosure. Some argued that the claims were sensationalist and lacked the necessary evidence to substantiate them. The absence of concrete proof beyond Callahan's testimony left room for doubt. The case brought attention to the greater issues of UFO disclosure and transparency within government agencies. It fueled public demand for greater openness regarding unidentified aerial phenomena, prompting calls for the declassification of documents. John Callahan's claims opened a safe of speculation, inviting closer examination of the relationship between officials and the mysteries of the skies. Number 4. Edgar Mitchell. Edgar Mitchell, a distinguished astronaut who was part of the Apollo 14 mission, left a mark not only on the lunar surface, but also in ufology and conspiracies of government secrecy. In 2008, Mitchell openly shared his suspicions regarding the existence of extraterrestrial life and made allegations of a government cover-up. Mitchell's cosmic revelation was rooted in his very unique perspective, as he was one of the few individuals, who had ventured beyond our planet's confines. Having spent a total of 9 hours on the moon's surface, Mitchell's experiences ignited a level of curiosity that had never been seen before. His claim that extraterrestrial life exists was grounded in the belief that the vastness of the universe makes it statistically improbable for Earth to be the sole harbor of life, which, I agree with. It's so insane to me that some people think we're the only sentient life in our literally giant universe. It was Mitchell's claim of a government cover-up that catapulted his allegations into a realm of controversy and subjected him to severe skepticism. According to Mitchell, high-ranking officials were aware of the presence of extraterrestrial beings, but actively chose to conceal this information from the public. Their secrecy, he argued, was motivated by concerns over societal upheaval and the potential impact on established power structures. Mitchell's claims are situated within the broader context of UFO conspiracy and a long-standing distrust of government transparency. While his status as an astronaut lends a sense of credibility to his statements, people often remind others that Mitchell's assertions lack concrete evidence. The absence of verifiable proof has led many to dismiss his claims as influenced by personal beliefs rather than factual occurrences. Despite the skepticism surrounding Mitchell's allegations, they have sparked discussions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life and the extent of government knowledge on the matter. Edgar Mitchell's claims of the existence of extraterrestrial life and a government cover-up add an interesting layer of discovery to the ever-changing discourse on alien life. Mitchell's perspective as an actual moonwalker and his willingness to challenge official narratives has brought a lot of attention to his theory. Number 3. Founding UAP task forces. In July of 2022, a government-aligned UAP organization was created, the ARO, or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, directed by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, is the government lead for all UAP-related anomalies. The purpose of ARO is summarized in their mission and vision statements, which say their goals are to minimize technical and intelligent surprise by synchronizing scientific intelligence and operational detection, identification, attribution, and mitigation of unidentified anomalous phenomena in the vicinity of national security areas. Unidentified anomalous phenomena are effectively and efficiently detected, tracked, and analyzed and managed by way of normalized DoD, intelligence community, and civil business practices, by adherence to the highest scientific and intelligence tradecraft standards, and with the greatest transparency and shared awareness. ARO reviews reports of UAPs and has received hundreds of reports. Dr. Kirkpatrick estimates that they receive 50 to 100 reports each month. They investigate each and every video and report using their scientific resources. The ARO reports to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks. It's the first government office to be tasked with synchronizing efforts across the DoD and the interagency to collect, report, and analyze UAPs. They are taking a collaborative, objective, data-driven approach to their mission. The ARO has a website that anyone can visit to check out all of this information for themselves. There are countless videos of UAP sightings posted to the government-backed website. They are also working on a government personnel sighting report program from current and former government employees who have any knowledge of UAP. ARO replaced the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, UAPT, which ran from 2019 to 2021. I personally think that the ARO is pretty cool. Oftentimes, alien conspiracists are shamed for not believing in science, but having an accomplished physicist show so much passion and determination for getting answers reminds all of us what science is really about. It's about understanding the worlds around us, asking questions, making theories, and of course, staying curious. Number 2. David Grusch. David Grusch is a decorated Afghanistan soldier and former Air Force intelligence officer who worked at the NGA, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, and at the NRO, the National Reconnaissance Office. He is an accomplished man who is extremely knowledgeable of all of the events and conversations that are taking place in government settings, especially surrounding UAP and Inhumans. David claimed that he was informed of a multi-decade Pentagon program that sought to locate, collect, and reconstruct UAP. He interviewed over 40 coworkers in 4 years and came to the conclusion that the government is currently in possession of UAP. He said that he actually knew the exact location of some of the technology, as the information was provided directly to him. David claims that the program is funded above congressional oversight, being bankrolled by a misappropriation of funds. He also claimed to be aware of colleagues who had recovered from non-human biologics derived from UAP crashes. He claims that his testimony was based on information given to him by trusted individuals who all had a long-standing record of legitimacy. He said that the sources shared proof in photographs, documentation, and official oral testimonies. When asked if he had known of anyone who lost their lives due to inhuman materials, Grusch responded, "I directed people with that knowledge to the appropriate authorities." Okay, a little sketchy, and the whole thing sounds a little off to me. Members of the government have come forward, painting David as a madman who doesn't know the difference between real and fake, but David was accompanied by 2 officers who both corroborated his story. Is it possible that David was telling the truth? Is there an organization that is currently conducting alien testing right under our noses? All I will say is that David's claims sound eerily familiar. The fact that David came forward with this testimony and was immediately labeled as an insane pathological liar shows how concerned the government is with becoming an object of suspicion. Painting people as crazy is a pretty common deflection tactic. I mean, how many times have you heard gaslighting being thrown around this year? Number 1. Colonel Philip J. Corso. Alright, so this is the extraterrestrial tea on Colonel Philip J. Corso and his wild claims from the book The Day After Roswell, which was co-written with William J. Burns and dropped in 1997. Get ready for a trip to the Roswell UFO incident in 1947, you know, the one where a UFO allegedly belly flopped near Roswell, New Mexico. So, Colonel Corso was not your average colonel. He said he was part of the Foreign Technology Desk at the Pentagon. His job? To dive into the mysteries of foreign tech, but he claimed he wasn't just handling your run-of-the-mill gadgets. He was knee-deep in overseeing the distribution of alien technology and rubble from none other than the very, very well-known alien debris site, the Roswell crash. According to Corso, the waste and debris from the Roswell crash is akin to a sci-fi garage sale. Fiber optics, night vision gear, and integrated circuit chips. Corso said that the military came down on the public spread of information and started a covert program to reverse engineer the found out-of-this-world contraptions. Suddenly, lasers, microchips, and Kevlar became a weapon science experiment. It's like the current Roswell gift shop, but with an added twist of Cold War strategic advantage. Corso wasn't shy about talking about his experience working with these found objects. Okay, he shouted from the rooftops that alien tech infusion into our everyday gadgets was a game changer. Lasers, thank you Roswell. Microchips, yep, Roswell too. Kevlar, you guessed it, straight from the advanced alien tech that landed in our feeble desert. He even claimed that these advancements gave the USA their upper hand during the Cold War, because if humans do anything well, it's turning things into weapons. It's like we just can't help it or something. According to Corso, the government wasn't ready to disclose the intergalactic discovery to the public. There was apparently a full-blown government cover-up, and he insisted it was all orchestrated to keep the public in the dark about the true origins of these mind-blowing advancements. The military, according to Corso, was like the secret funder and provider of gifts, like Santa of the alien world, quietly slipping extraterrestrial tech-filled packages to defense contractors and researchers without a whisper of the extraterrestrial origin. The Roswell incident and its aftermath are a wild ride through the unknown. Buckle up, space enthusiasts, because Colonel Corso took us on a trip from a crashed UFO to lasers and microchips with a side of government secrecy. Who needs Netflix when you've got Roswell, right? That brings us to the end of today's video.
Coming in at number 5, we have secret experiments. This is nothing new. The government has been up to all sorts of secret experiments. If we go back through the 20th century, we have things like MK Ultra. This is when the CIA and the American government was obsessed with mind control and trying to find some way to implement it into warfare and interrogations. Some of the things they would do is take someone and put them in isolation for an undetermined amount of time and see if they would break mentally and start giving up information. They would mostly do this on prisoners that had no idea they were part of an experiment. Wow, that definitely sounds ethical, but that isn't even the most notorious part. What the experiment is really famous for is when the CIA would use LSD, that is a hallucinatory drug known as acid to try and control people's minds in interrogations. They would give people doses of LSD without them knowing and put them under extreme questioning. Once again, they would do this to people who had no idea they were being experimented on. Eventually, the tests were all stopped and a lot of the information on the studies was released to the public. Some people think that this was just a lost attempt at trying to find a way to control people, but other people are convinced that the government was successful in finding some way to take control over people's minds. So this begs the question, what kind of secret studies or experiments is the government conducting now? We think that they've learned their lesson from their mistakes, but it's the government. They are the masters of doing things that cost tons of money and that are extremely unethical. This is their bread and butter, baby. They could be doing tests on artificial intelligence without us knowing, working on making a living, thinking AI that has the ability to feel emotions and make complex decisions. Not only would this be terrifying, but the tests they could be running could be seen as some sort of torture in the future. Coming in at number 4, we have receiving data from social media companies. When it comes to data and information, we know that the government can't be trusted. They will find some way to get your stuff. It doesn't matter what your data is. Do you spend 2 hours a day looking at memes? The government wants to know about it. Do you have a habit of ordering McDonald's delivered right to your house even though you live 5 minutes away from the nearest Donnie's? The government wants to know about that too. Am I just sharing with you my bad tendencies that I should probably stop because they are holding me back? That could be a possibility too. But we already know that the NSA was looking at all your phone calls, all of your emails, and collecting all of your data back in 2013, and you think just because we caught them they were gonna stop? No way! Then Facebook got caught for selling data, and you don't think that other major companies aren't doing the same thing? Data is the most valuable thing on the planet right now, and there's no way that the government doesn't have their hands in the pot somewhere. That was the big problem with TikTok. It's Chinese owned, so America didn't want their data flying out to another country from the American people, but they are perfectly fine with it staying in the hands of the American people, probably because they're getting a piece of it. Coming at number 3, we have secret weapons, especially in America where the military funding is through the roof. Who knows what sort of technological advancements are happening behind closed doors? I don't think we will ever know what's going on until they want us to know. Places like Area 51 have stayed secret forever, and even when there was supposed to be a massive raid, which just turned out to be a bunch of people hanging out in the desert for a good laugh, none of the secrets have leaked out. Well, not none of them. There are some people who have claimed to work at Area 51 and have leaked some secrets. Most famously is Bob Lazar. If you follow the content I'm a part of, then you will for sure have heard me talk about Bob Lazar before. He is known as the man who worked at Area 51 and then started spilling the beans about what was going on there. There's a documentary about him on Netflix, and he has been on Rogan talking about some of the stuff that he worked on. Now, Bob has never claimed to work on any sort of weaponry. He says that all the stuff he worked on had to do with flight. He was working on a new type of spaceship that can move faster than anything we could comprehend. Basically, the way he described it is these secret spaceships use what's called a gravity reactor, which bends gravity around them that lets a ship move at an insane speed. It's a form of propulsion that was thought to be impossible, and he says that it's not only possible, but it uses something called element 115 to happen. This is the substance that is used in the gravity reactor. Even though Bob has never worked on anything to do with weaponry, he did mention that there was some sort of evidence of weaponry testing and design using element 115. What on earth could that look like? What does a gravity gun or gravity bomb do to a person or an entire city? Bob worked with the government in Area 51 back in the 80s, so who knows what kind of advancements they have made since then. The American government could be hiding a weapon that could have the destructive capabilities to take out an entire country or blow up the moon. Or if they could shoot nukes faster than the speed of light, there wouldn't be a lot of time to get shelter and protect your people if that gets fired at you. Well, let's hope we never have to experience something like that, because I don't want the world ending right now. There's also things like Project HARP, a system of radio towers in Alaska that apparently have the ability to control the weather and even cause things like powerful earthquakes. Imagine you could weaponize the weather, cause lightning lightning and hail to decimate your enemy. It would be like they're in the movie Geostorm. You could make the terrain too cold to fight on, or make the weather too erratic for your enemy to grow crops to feed their troops. They would quickly be bending the knee to your godlike power. There's also rumors that Project HARP has the ability to send out a low frequency signal to a large area and cause an entire population to pass out. You could incapacitate an entire city. Alright, coming in at number 2 we have aliens. I mean, we were just talking about Area 51, so it only makes sense that we talk about aliens for a little bit. The government has known about aliens for a long time, and they just started telling us. They need to open the door and let us know all the things about these little green dudes walking around, because I want to become their friend and go on a crazy space adventure. Now, if you want to go really deep, you could say that aliens are running the government, and that is why they won't spill the beans. But that's not the vibe we're going for today. What I'm going to focus on is the fact that we know the government has been hiding the truth about aliens, because they recently declassified a lot of alien files and started showing us UFOs and the fact that they are real. They even released government footage of a UFO. There was a legit flying saucer caught on camera just floating around, and no one reacted at all. Mind you, the world was kind of on fire at that point with all the protests and coronavirus, but it's still crazy and no one cared. But here's what I'm thinking. There's no way that they told us everything. There's no way that the little bit of footage and documents that were shown to us was everything they have to offer. And the stuff that they're hiding is probably the best stuff. I bet they have a full alien language mapped out that you can learn on Rosetta Stone. And coming in at the number 1 spot, we have Jeffrey Epstein's involvement with the government. This is a massive conspiracy that is still in the forefront of most news stories. It is the wildest story to hit America mainstream media in years, and really it's just getting started. If you don't know what's going on, let me fill you in. Jeffrey Epstein was a mystery multimillionaire. No one really knew where he got his money from. He was associated with some of the most rich and powerful people in the world, people in the film and television industry, high-ranking government officials, even members of the royal family of England have connections to this guy. Jeffrey Epstein was a known human trafficker, and he had an island which we suspected was a place where rich and powerful people would fly to partake in human trafficking with victims that were not of legal age. I can't go into detail on what would happen there, it is too inappropriate for this channel, but when you hear private island, human trafficking, not of legal age, rich and powerful people, I think you can piece together what was happening. And if you want things in more detail, just literally Google Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Jeffrey Epstein had a plane which was nicknamed the Lolita Express. That alone is extremely disturbing. When you start to go into the flight logs on this plane, you start to find a lot of wealthy people. Many of them were high-ranking government officials. People like Bill Clinton, Prince Andrew, Tom Pritzker, a member of one of the richest families in the United States, and former president of Colombia, Andres Pastrana. The list goes on and on. Then one day Jeffrey Epstein is arrested, and it looks like he's going to have to stand trial for all of his horrible offenses and spill the beans. But before he gets the chance, he mysteriously dies in jail. It seems very convenient that someone who could probably ruin so many rich and powerful people died out of nowhere. So the question is, how deep do the Epstein ties go into the government? And if you thought the story was over, oh, we are far away from the end. Epstein's right-hand woman, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the person who would find many of these people to take to Epstein's island, is now under arrest and set to stand trial. And in a strange turn of events, the president was questioned about her being in jail, and he said, "I wish her well." What does that mean? Who knows?
Coming in at number 5, we have the Guy Hottel memos. Being the tinfoil hat guy, let's kick it off with some aliens, shall we? In December 1936, a man by the name of Guy Hottel was named acting head of the FBI's Washington field office. He was appointed special agent in charge and served until 1955. So what's so special about this guy? Well, it's the most popular searched file in the FBI vault. The new internet database housing hundreds of bureau records released under the Freedom of Information Act. In the past 2 years, the file has been viewed more than 1 million times, and yet only a semi-redacted, single-page memo relaying an unconfirmed report the FBI never commented on is a hot topic. 63 years ago, March 1950, it was authorized by Mr. Hottel, taken to FBI headquarters in DC by him, and addressed and hand-delivered to FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover, surrounding the apparent flying saucers problem. Quote, "The saucers were described as being circular in shape with raised centers and approximately 50 feet in diameter. Each one was occupied by 3 bodies of human shape, at 3 feet tall, dressed in metallic cloth of a very fine texture. Each body was bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits used by speed flyers and test pilots were familiar with." Yeah, this is alarming. It was the first file released publicly in the late 70s and posted on the FBI website for several years, but heavily redacted. It is sharpied all over the place. The Guy Hottel memo could just be a hoax, or could the infamous events in Roswell in 1947 have led the FBI to this memo? For a few years after the Roswell incident, Director Hoover did order his agents on behalf of the Air Force to verify any UFO sightings. That is true, but that doesn't mean anything came back. Regardless, this FBI report looks and sounds terrifying, and a hoax gone on that long doesn't seem too plausible to me. What do you think? Number 4, PRISM. PRISM is the code name for the program that the United States National Security Agency collects internet communications from various US internet companies and stores it. The program PRISM collects stored internet communications based on demands made to internet companies under Section 702 of the FISA Amendments Act of 2008 to turn over any data that matches court-approved search keywords. Yeah. Basically, they have the right to pry wherever and whenever they want. The NSA program began in 2007 in the wake of the Bush administration, and its existence was leaked only 6 years after its start by NSA contractor Edward Snowden. He basically warned us all that mass data collection was far deeper than the public knew, resulting in it being way more criminal than legal. The disclosure was published by The Guardian and The Washington Post in 2013. The leaked documents include 41 PowerPoint slides identifying several major tech companies as participants in the PRISM program, including Microsoft, Yahoo, Google, Facebook, YouTube, AOL, Skype, and Apple. Yeah, that's like the entire internet. Shortly after publication of the reports, the US Director of National Intelligence, James Clapper, released a statement confirming that for nearly 6 years, the government had indeed been using large internet service companies such as Facebook to collect information on foreigners outside of the US. And quote, "Defense initiative against national security threats." Yeah. Admitted it too, huh? Yeah, you really can't do that, as there are kind of privacy acts and laws forbidding that. In a closed-door Senate hearing, FBI Director Robert Mueller said that Snowden's leaks had caused, quote, "significant harm to our nation and our safety." And in 2013, the United States Department of Justice moved against Snowden with 2 counts of violating the Espionage Act of 1917 and theft of government property. Ha! Government property. That's funny. They then revoked his passport, and 2 days later, he flew into Moscow's international airport, where Russian authorities welcomed him and eventually granted Snowden permanent residency in 2020. Traitor or hero? What do you think? Number 3, Operation Highjump. Operation Highjump, officially titled the United States Navy Antarctic Development Program, launched from 1946 to 1947, was a United States Navy operation to establish an Antarctic research base. The operation was organized by Admiral Richard E. Byrd. Operation Highjump, which included 4,700 men, 13 ships, and 33 aircrafts. The war's end also signaled the onset of the atomic age and a desire to secure supplies of uranium and other natural resources. With its almost unlimited mineral deposits and largely unexplored territory of the Antarctic, it was a prize. It commenced in August 1946 and ended in late 1947. Or did it? In August 1946, Chief of U.S. Naval Operations Chester Nimitz, great name, announced that a massive combined military expedition named Operation Highjump would be launched into Antarctica during summer in the most southern hemisphere. The operation involved a variety of aircrafts, including newly purchased helicopters, also known as Task Force 68. Byrd and his team established the Little America 4 base, near where 3 previous bases had already been situated. The frozen aircrafts would photograph as much as Antarctica's land surface as possible during the 3-month operation, photographing the east to the west coast, while seismology tests were also being done. Upon reaching the Ross Ice Shelf, the ships carrying aircrafts, ice vehicles, supplies, tents, sled dogs, they would all establish Little America 4, the official Antarctica headquarters. By the time Operation Highjump was completed in March, a dozen large military flights had already been to the base. One, however, did not, which resorted in the operation to take more of an aggressive search and rescue mission for a downed plane and 3 lost airmen. Due to the weather, the aircraft crashed, and a search plane spotted the wreckage 13 days later. Their signal, painted on the wrecked wings indicated that 3 of the crewmen were unfortunately dead. Since it was impossible to land in the area, messages were dropped directing the other survivors to make their way to open water about 10 miles to the north. The men successfully made the trek and were brought to Pine Island by the rescue aircraft. Other operations would follow, including the US Navy's Operation Windmill in 1947 and 1948, and eventually treaties were signed by all involved nations to ensure that Antarctica remained a non-military zone and more of a scientific hub. Number 2, Operation MK Ultra. MK Ultra was the code name of a semi-legal human experimentation program designed and undertaken by the CIA. The project was headed by Sidney Gottlieb, but began under the order of the CIA director Alan Dulles. The experiments were intended to develop procedures and identify which substances, such as LSD, could be used in interrogations methods to weaken individuals and force confessions from them via brainwashing and psychological torture. MK Ultra used numerous methods to manipulate mental states and brain functions such as brainwashing, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, isolation, and a variety of information-seeking methods. MK Ultra was the birth and start of 2 other programs, Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke. It began in 1953 but was halted in 1973. It was organized through the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence and coordinated with the United States Army Biological Warfare. The program engaged in illegal activities, however, including the use of unwitting and non-consenting test subjects. MK Ultra's scope was pretty broad, with activities carried out under the guise of research at more than 80 institutions, including colleges and universities. Also, hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies. Yeah, they were deep. MK Ultra was first brought to public attention in 1975 by Congress and the Commission on CIA Activities. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered 20,000 documents relating to MK Ultra, which led the Senate to some hearings. Yeah, I'd think so. Boston mobster James Whitey Bulger and cult leader Charles Manson were both subjects of these experiments. Interesting. And coming in at number 1, Operation Paperclip. Operation Paperclip was a secret United States intelligence program in which more than 1,600 former German SS scientists, engineers, and technicians were relocated from Germany to the US for government employment after the end of World War II, between 1945 and about 1959. But why? The primary purpose of this secret operation was US military's advantage in information against Soviets, precipitating the space race. Similarly, the Soviet Union Operation Oso Aviacum did pretty well the exact same thing, relocating more than 2,200 German specialists during one night in 1946 in secrecy. Over 2,000 Army personnel examined 5,000 German targets with high priority information and research surrounding rubber, oil, armored military, V-2 rockets, aircraft, equipment, radios, chemicals, medicine, you name it. They wanted that science. The US Joint Chiefs of Staff established the first secret recruitment program called Operation Overcast in 1945. Representatives included the Army Director of Intelligence, the Chief of Naval Intelligence, the Chief of Air Staff, and the State Department. 1945, Operation Overcast was renamed Operation Paperclip by the officers who would attach a paperclip to the folders of classified rocket knowledge whom were crucial to the Americans. President Truman officially approved Operation Paperclip and expanded it to include 1,000 German scientists under temporary limited military custody. Basically, they were now citizens if they played ball. I can see why they kept it a secret for so long. The NASA Distinguished Service Medal is the highest award bestowed by them, and after more than 2 decades of service, 4 Operation Paperclip members were awarded the medals in 1969 for their research surrounding the space race. If you're unfamiliar with the works of Annie Jacobsen, I recommend you check her out for some more information.
Coming in at number 5, we have Area 51, a classic birthplace of conspiracies about aliens and UFOs, but do you know what actually goes on inside those highly secured walls? Located 120 miles northwest of Las Vegas, the base is a government-controlled piece of land. The ground space of Area 51 is so big that it's around the size of Connecticut. Surrounding the base, there is very little around it, far from modern living styles, and even lacks cell reception, and this is by design, as in 1954 the CIA was asked by the president to find a secret location and found what they were looking for here. Civilians are prohibited to enter the grounds of Area 51, with threats of a fine fine and imprisonment if civilians trespass or take photos of the building. In 2013, the CIA approved the release of declassified documents about the history of the site. This was the first time the US government acknowledged the existence of Area 51, even though it has been in operation since 1955. Area 51 is shrouded in mystery. According to ex-government sources, this mysterious area of Nevada is mostly a test site for experimental military technology, like the SR-71 Blackbird airplane, and now a secret extraterrestrial testing facility. Additionally, Area 51 is home to the nation's overhead surveillance program. It's where some of the most important spying aircraft in American history was assembled, tested, and ultimately sent out on missions. Experts say it's likely remains an area for the Air Force and US spy agencies to develop the next generation of aircraft and other weapons of war. The conspiracies around Area 51 in relation to examining aliens are due to the multiple reports of reported UFOs around the grounds of Area 51. Though these weren't UFOs, they were the aircrafts the government was testing on the grounds. That being said, since it has forever been locked away from the public, it's not for certain exactly what goes on within the walls of Area 51. But the fact that it was declassified 60 years after it began operations is a bit scary if you ask me. In at number 4 we have John Lennon's CIA case. John Lennon is a pop culture icon and is best known for being one of the members of the Beatles, though the Federal Bureau of Investigation considered Lennon a threat. This is because the government wasn't too keen on a foreigner spreading anti-war, anti-Nixon messages to the rather large counterculture movement in the United States. Thus, the FBI did what the FBI does best and kept detailed surveillance records of Lennon's activities while actively trying to deport him. The FBI suspected Lennon would disrupt proceedings in the 1972 presidential election, where Nixon hoped to be re-elected, with a planned tour complete with voter registration efforts and anti-war protests. To help stop him, the Immigration and Nationalization Service, which would later be absorbed into the Department of Homeland Security, began deportation proceedings against Lennon. It appears that their preemptive efforts worked. Lennon never did the tour and Nixon was re-elected. It took 14 years for the FBI to release their files on John Lennon. Historian John Wiener spent those years fighting to gain access to the FBI's secret files on John Lennon. At first, the FBI refused to release many of the documents, saying their release would endanger national security. Wiener's Freedom of Information case went all the way to the Supreme Court before the FBI agreed to settle. In those files, it seems that their biggest concern was Lennon's association with radical anti-war activities, and his ability to influence voters to vote against the Nixon administration in the coming election. Therefore, the CIA led to the conclusion that his visa should be terminated in the interest of national security. John didn't go down without a fight though and fought this claim with lawyers. When that didn't work, the CIA tried to deport Lennon, this time by catching him for narcotics, even though the FBI doesn't enforce possession of narcotics charges as it is a state offense. That being said, the CIA proceeded to give the Miami FBI office a discreet porter to arrange a drug bust. However, all of Lennon's files were destroyed due to what they claimed to be part of a routine file destruction procedure, so this can't be known for certain. Coming in at number 3, we have the Bohemian Club. The Bohemian Club is an elite invitation-only social club founded in San Francisco in 1872. The Bohemian Club began renting the campground for an annual retreat before purchasing it outright in 1899. But what actually happens at the club? Well, in June and July, some of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country flocked to the Redwood Grove in Sonoma County, California. They're all members of this so-called Bohemian Club, a private all-male club that's counted US presidents, military officials, artists, and business leaders as members. Over the years, a number of those gathered club members have happened to be US presidents. Because of its secrecy, strange ceremonies, and elite body of members, the Bohemian Club has long been the subject of sinister online rumors, with a number of journalists trying to infiltrate the campground just to try and get a glimpse of what actually goes on in the camp. The journalist Alex Shumatov was caught and detained for trespassing. Filmmaker Alex Jones had more success with with his infiltration in 2000, where he entered the camp with a hidden camera. Jones was able to capture a ceremony called the cremation of the care. During this ceremony, members were seen wearing costumes and cremating a coffin before a 40-foot owl. While the reported Philip Weiss snuck into the Bohemian Grove in 1987 and spent a few days mingling with the rich and powerful. A former dining server described the club as a place where the elite could engage in behavior that doesn't usually fly for people of their stature in the regular world. In the 21st century, the Bohemian Club maintained its reputation for being highly exclusive, with a predominantly Caucasian membership composed of the richest and often most politically conservative men in the United States. Coming in at number 2, we have Walt Disney working for the FBI. Who would have thought that the founder of Mickey Mouse and the Disney Empire served as an FBI informant? From 1940 until his death in 1966, Walt Disney secretly served in the FBI. Walt Disney served as a secret informer for the Los Angeles office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. According to documents that have come to light about this secret arrangement, Disney was tasked with reporting on the activities of Hollywood actors, writers, producers, directors, technicians, and union activists suspected of political subversion. At this time, communism was on the rise around the world, and American officials were concerned about these ideals spreading into society. The documents report that during a strike of animators at the Disney studio in 1941, Walt Disney publicly accused the strike leaders of communistic agitation. When Disney, whose right-wing leanings were well known, testified before the House Committee on Un-American Activities in Washington, he named several of the animators who had led the strike as communists. In return for Disney's information, the director of the bureau allowed Disney to film in the FBI headquarters in Washington. For his part, Disney allowed the director access to Disney scripts and make changes in movies and episodes of the Mickey Mouse Club television show. Due to Disney providing the bureau with information and doing such a good job, he was named full special agent in charge contact in 1954. This title was given to those who were trusted informers that is able to provide transportation and equipment, as well as public relations services to the bureau. And finally, in at number 1, we have they investigated ESPs. The extrasensory perception, also known as ESP, is considered a sixth sense, including claimed reception of information not gained through the recognized physical senses but sensed with the mind. According to the FBI Vault, ESP is considered a perception of information about events beyond what may be discerned through the 5 physical senses or deduced from past experience or knowledge. The FBI's interest in ESP goes back to 1957, when the bureau was contacted by a man called Foose, who claimed that he could teach the blind to see. While CIA was not impressed by the tricks of Foose, it wouldn't be the end of the agency's or the FBI's interest in psychic and paranormal phenomena. From there, the FBI once spent time and money investigating extrasensory perception. There has also been reports of experimenting with ways to weaponize people with ESP. This was a highly secret program during the 1970s by the government that took place in research labs in California. The bureau attempted to look at the phenomenon from a rational and logical viewpoint, using cold hard science and math, much like the CIA and DIA later would. In their attempt to construct a laboratory test to objectively measure psychic phenomena, the results of the laboratory tests that they held remain unknown, as the files were excluded from the FBI's release. Considering the interest of the Army and CIA in the FBI's psychic research, whatever their results were likely helped justify the future course of the intelligence community's research into psychic perception. Based on concerns ESP could be used as part of an international spying, the FBI spent more than 3 years looking into the phenomenon before they concluded there was no scientific support for their concerns.
Number 5. Area 51. Area 51 probably has the most secretive reputation of any building in the United States, maybe even in the world. More so than the Pentagon, the White House, Chuck E. Cheese, you name it. And Area 51 didn't get this reputation because it was easy to get into. It says a lot that our best hope for finding out what was inside Area 51 was for all of us to just sort of swarm the place en masse and kind of hope that there'd be too many of us for them to stop. The thing is though, as good a plan as the Area 51 raid, the US Army kind of saw it coming. Now maybe it's because it was very heavily broadcasted and there was a Facebook event page ready to go telling everyone exactly when to meet, but it could also be because the entire surrounding area around Area 51 is completely surveyed. Not a single stone is left unseen. Armed guards patrol the grounds literally all hours of the day, and there's radars and towers watching the skies above, so no dropping in Fortnite style either. Up until 2018 actually, you could not even get a look at Area 51, as it was blocked out on Google Earth and most satellite global positioning technology. In fact, until President Obama, Area 51 was never even officially confirmed to exist, and all presidents would outright deny it. Some conspiracists suggest even there's cameras hidden all around the countryside in the rocks, keeping an eye on everything that goes on in the main road. You want to know just how serious they take the security at Area 51 if that wasn't enough to convince you? Say you land a job at Area 51, even if you're just like a janitor or a guy who refills the vending machines. Well, you have to fly into Area 51 for your commute. There's no commuter traffic, so you fly in from McCarran International. I'm guessing all the parking spaces are taken up by flying saucers. This secretive airline is called Janet Airlines, a clever acronym for just another non-existent terminal. And Janet may very well be America's most exclusive airline. Even the flight attendants who work on Janet are given top-level government clearance, just in case they overhear something they're not supposed to. You know, a man in black talking about the Type 25 Kig-Yar plasma pistol they recovered from a crash site. They know that's above their pay grade and to just keep moving and get a move on those peanuts. Now, there's no word officially on whether or not flying Janet gets you air miles, but we have to assume so. And if you're looking for more scary stories, government conspiracies, aliens, cryptids, well, we've got lots of that and then some on Top 5 Scary. Click through, subscribe, and creep on creeping on. Number 4. Roswell, New Mexico. This is probably the most infamous confirmed cover-up in government history. Mostly because the process of covering it up kind of made everyone a lot more suspicious and started a national conversation about aliens that's still going to this day. Now, it all started way back in 1947 when a rancher discovered mysterious debris on his property. It didn't look like anything he had recognized at the time, so naturally he was a bit confused. It was these lightweight, paper-thin alloys that looked a bit like aluminum foil, strange rubbers, fiber optic cables. If you lived on a ranch in the 50s, it seemed like space-age technology. Now, about 2 weeks earlier, civilian pilot Kenneth Arnold had made headlines after claiming that he had seen a series of flying saucers. So in the American shared collective consciousness, flying saucers were very fresh, exciting, and new. The rancher reported it to a local sheriff, who reported it to the Air Force, and then whispers leaked out to the press, and a headline was published: RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell. And the rest was basically history. Imagine picking up the newspaper when you see a headline from a credible source that said the government had recovered a flying saucer. I kind of get where all the hysteria is coming from here. Now, where the interesting part comes in is that this little story worked out very well for the government, who were doing their level best to distract the public from the true nature of what they were working on, which would later to be discovered to be Project Mogul, a nuclear bomb detection hardware. It was a top-level Black Ops secret project, launching these little weather balloons with audio recording equipment to try and detect nuclear bombs being launched in the Soviet Union. So the alien cover-up worked very well, since not a soul was talking about weather balloons, and all of the conversation instead became fascinated around whether or not the Air Force was really harboring alien corpses and flying saucer wreckage, with rumors trickling out of the woodwork like water spilling out of a burst pipe. You know, there were stories of an alien autopsy, reverse-engineered UFO crafts, the men in black knocking on people's doors. All of this talked about over a downed balloon. To this day, however, there are still those who champion that the real truth about Roswell has yet to come out, including the 45th President of the United States, who claimed he's heard some very interesting things about the 1947 incident, but didn't allude to anything further. Number 3. MK Ultra. If I have learned anything in my time diving into the unknown, is that the truth invariably is always stranger than fiction, and I have seen some stranger things. All 4 seasons of it. Love that show. Love 11, Steve Harrington and the gang. I think it's so cool that the show takes this wild sci-fi premise like the CIA trying to use narcotics to train people to be psychic super soldiers. It's very creative, and oh, they actually did that. The CIA actually did that. Oh, okay. I'm just playing, of course I knew that, I'm a conspiracy theorist. The core backstory behind Hawkins' favorite little psychic is just as wild as the show. Starting all the way in 1953, the CIA began researching serious efforts into harnessing humanity's latent extrasensory abilities. This program was called MK Ultra, and I'm gonna tell you right now, we would need like 5 or 6 videos to even begin scratching the surface about this one. So if this is something you're at all curious about, this incredibly real thing the American government did, please look it up after this video. Now the true extent of the program we can't really discuss, but participants were put through torturous experiences, including electrocution, unknowingly dosing subjects, and a lot more. Many documents were outright destroyed by the CIA's direction in the 70s, but what documents we do have let us into a bit of insight. The CIA was worried of the Soviets' technological advancements over them, and they were doing everything they could to try and get the edge in interrogation and data collection, and believed that with the aid of substances, mental gymnastics, they could effectively mind control another human being and make them into a tool for their will. A declassified document states outright the purpose of the MK Ultra experiments was to find a way to promote and enhance the abilities of individuals to withstand coercion, as well as produce confusion and amnesia, to create materials which will cause the victim to age faster or slower, and to promote illogical thinking and impulsiveness to the point where the recipient would be discredited in public. Now this might surprise you, but the victims of MK Ultra were for the most part psychologically ravaged for the rest of their life. The CIA was pulling people literally off of the streets, experimenting on homeless, convicts, single parents, people with nowhere to turn who they know wouldn't tell anybody and who wouldn't be believed. Number 2. Project Gateway. Wow, we're gonna build off that last point. Bet you didn't think that'd be a 2-part point, did you? Well, some fun terrible trivia for you. MK Ultra was far from the only CIA bit of mind control and parapsychological program they were researching. And these are just the ones we know about for certain. A good skeptic knows there's probably way more we don't know about. So, mind control and being able to make a subject impressionable was one thing, but like I said, it was far from the only sensory research project. Let's talk a bit about Project Gateway. This was the CIA's attempt to harness the full extent of the brain. You've probably heard that old adage that you only use 10% of it. This was them trying to use 100, with the hopes that with enough practice, subjects would be able to release their consciousness outside of their physical body and astrally project, with the ultimate goal being full-scale mental time travel, allowing the consciousness to exist beyond the physical realm and access mental memories, experience them from a third-person perspective. If successful, subjects would theoretically be able to relive their own memories, take stock of their surroundings in new ways, and gather intel no one could have. It sounds completely made up and sci-fi. It sounds like the plot of The Men Who Stare at Goats, except that we have got it fairly documented as a real thing. Now, it's very complicated stuff, and not easy to parse into an 11-minute video, but if you want a very quick layman's idea on the experiment, the thinking was that a combination of binaural beats, intensive meditation sessions would affect the flow of the heartbeat and blood flow of the brain and would start to awaken it. There was a line in this document that says if your brain is like a light, the process of Project Gateway was to try and convert that light into a highly focused laser beam. So did it work? Did we have psychic super soldiers? Well, officially, no. The project director found himself frustrated that he wasn't given enough time to produce any truly impressive results from Project Gateway, but maintained that he felt if he had a few more years of solid work and very promising candidates, he could have attained his dreams of separating somebody's body from their consciousness and releasing it into the world. Now officially, Project Gateway was disbanded, but we're on number 2 on this list, so I sincerely hope by now you've realized that there is a lot more they're not telling you. Number 1. Project Blue Book. So, Area 51, Roswell, officially, those are government conspiracies about aliens that the government outright denies. They would never actually devote any of their money and research to something as silly as aliens, right? Of course not. Unless you're an avid UFO conspiracist and you're already very aware of Project Blue Book, the Air Force program to assess and analyze the possible threat of UFOs and flying saucers. The project officially began in 1952 and was terminated in 1969. Blue Book had 2 main goals as the driving force behind it. Number 1, confirm first and foremost if UFOs, UAPs, flying saucers, whatever you want to call it, if they were a threat to American security. Number 2, scientifically analyze all UFO UFO data to ascertain their origins. In nearly 2 decades of Project Blue Book's operation, there were over 12,618 reports filed and written. And those are just the ones reported about as part of this project. That is 12,000 official US government documents on possible alien tech and UFOs. Of these 12,000, 700 of them were found to be completely unexplainable or missing too much data to be conclusive. Now, before we jump straight into pointing at the stars and hollering about flying saucers, a good number of these would end up actually being fairly rationally explained. A lot of them ended up being CIA spy plane testing, with the CIA themselves believing that the testing of the U-2 spy craft resulted in more UFO hysteria than anybody else throughout the 50s and 60s. Now, the project was shut down, and 3 main reasons were given for its conclusion. Number 1, no UFOs reported and evaluated by the Air Force had ever given any indication of threat to national security. Number 2, there was no evidence submitted to or discovered by the Air Force that sightings categorized as unidentified represent technological developments or principles beyond the range of present-day scientific knowledge. Number 3, there has been no evidence indicating the sightings categorized as unidentified are extraterrestrial vehicles. Well, that's kind of disappointing. You're telling me in 12,000 documents you don't think any of them could maybe be aliens? Well, that was the end of the line for Project Blue Book. It would be a far cry away from the last time the government would investigate aliens. Now, if you watch our videos, you no doubt have heard me lose my mind once or twice about the UAP reports, and get ready to watch me do it again. When the Pentagon confirmed very recently that they have a very active UFO program and they are still watching the skies looking for the truth just like us. The conversation about UFOs has never been more grounded, ironically enough. Never more believable, never more reasonable, never more rational. And I'm still yelling like I got a tinfoil hat on my head. We'll find the truth someday, my true believers, I know.